Part 2, Example 1, Heartlight.
With this, let's turn the camera around. Okay, so this is under pretty warm lighting. This is warm indoor lighting. So this is my latest painting. It's called Heartlight. All one word. So now if we're gonna talk about art vocab, right? If you can see color well, or if you can, well, you know, everybody can see some degree of color, I'm pretty sure. First thing that I will say that hits me from seeing this is probably the use of color. I have tried with my acrylic paintings to use color quite vibrantly, to use color in a way that makes things quite lively. So I kept a lot of the colors very saturated. There's a lot of purples in the background, blue hues here. I don't know if you can tell, but the skin tone is actually a mixture of like the sort of warmish green. Well, I'm going to put this down. Sort of the warmish green that's coming from the Heartlight. It's a mixture of like a warmish green, and then like the shadows are a very kind of warm orange, actually. I don't know if you can tell it's an orange-ish skin tone, but that's done intentionally because the light and shadow play here was really important in the overall composition of the piece. And again, we're going to review composition is like where things are placed in the piece, as well as how things are placed in the piece. And different things about leading lines can lend itself to a sense of unity to the composition. So, for instance, there's a lot of leading lines kind of coming away from the focal point, which is the subject with the Heartlight. You see all these lines in the background, right? So there's like a radial line schematic kind of going on in the background. And it all kind of leads away from the focal point, but it also works to draw your eyes into the focal point as well. So even though it's going out from the focal point, it also works to draw in. That's something about radial lines that can be helpful. And that creates a sense of unity, as I said, unity being a principle of design that describes the coherence of a work that results from the parts of the piece working in harmony. That can create a sense of unity because like there's like consistency around the subject about where those lines are coming from and like how they're kind of coming out. Right? There's like it's unified, it looks cohesive because there is consistency. Right? So that's how, for example, that's how line, you can talk about line creating cohesiveness, creating unity, and then there's like a good balance of like there's a good balance of the light and dark in the background as well on all sides of the piece, so that kind of creates a balance. It's a principle of design that results when the elements of design are composed to evoke equality in importance. To review. So there's balance, there's unity, use of line, use of color. We've also got use of line in the Heartlight itself. We're just going to refer to this object as the Heartlight, but really the concept, like I could talk about the conceptual meaning of this piece for a while, but we're not going to try to talk about that right now. We're just going to talk about like the technical aspects of like just how it was constructed. So there's line work in this Heartlight. You can kind of see like the brush strokes, right? And you can kind of see, actually, the cool thing about this piece is that I also used glass bead gel. I don't know if you can tell. Let's see. Yeah, the camera kind of picks it up a little bit. Like there's a little bit of texturing going on, but especially when you shine like a bright light on it, or if you have the right lighting hitting it a certain way. Maybe if I can turn on, I don't think I can turn on my flash right now. But if I were able to, actually wait, maybe I can. Let's see. If I can turn on my flash, you might be able to tell oh no, I can't do it. You might be able to tell like what the glass bead gel is actually able to do in terms of adding visual interest. So again, we were talking about texture. This texture adds a bit of visual interest. Also, just FYI, if you're ever at an art museum or gallery or something like that, don't ever touch the paintings. Generally that's frowned upon because out of respect to the artist and what they've done with their piece and what they've done with their canvas. Yeah, especially if it's a painting or drawing, 2D painting, even 3D items, like really anything. You don't want to touch art generally. Only the artist is allowed to touch their art because you never know when you might smudge an oil painting. I had a friend tell me that they had an oil painting completely ruined because somebody didn't know it wasn't dry and they totally like just ran their fingers through some beautiful swans or something like that. This is acrylic and this is dry, so like it's not going to smudge, it's not going to move anywhere. But again, I'm the artist and I can touch my piece, but if you were here and you touched my piece, I wouldn't like it so much. Anyway, that was a tangent. So yeah, texture, we're talking about adding visual interest. So like when you come up close to it, you get to see more texture. When you zoom out, not so much. But again, it's like texture can add an element to paintings in a way that it draws people to come closer to your artwork. So like if they look at it from far away, they see the gestalt, the overall look of your painting, and then if they are really, really interested in your painting and they want to see more about it, or they want to see more about the details, then they might, their eyes might start scanning around. You kind of see some line work here that kind of brings that back in this way. You might start scanning around for details. You see all this line work, and then, oh, look at this. You see some texture here, and that draws in your eyes to look more at this area. So a good place to add texture is usually where you want your eyes to be focused on. Because your eyes will, where there is texture and where there isn't. And generally where there is texture, you want to look at that more, or you want to look at it longer because there's more to pick up on. Okay, so let's see. We talked about color, we talked about line, we talked about unity, we talked about balance. Value is something you can achieve with color. I know we talked earlier about value with black and white, but if you were to like take a picture of this, convert it to black and white, that's also another way you could tell like where are the dark values, where are the light values. But like just quickly, like you can tell like that shadow inside the sleeve of the t-shirt, that's where dark values are, and then there's like lighter values around the flame here, or around the Heartlight. There's lighter values in the background right along this edge, lighter values along like inside the face. And that's all used to convey like a sense of light, right? And then shape-wise, this, you could talk about this Heartlight being kind of teardrop shaped, like that. You could talk about the lines of the body kind of leading into this area, and then like this line coming in through here and coming back in here. So like there's like a lot of, again, a lot of art vocabulary you could be using to talk about this. But again, if you haven't learned how to speak about art, I can totally understand and sympathize with how that might seem like an intimidating thing to do, or something that you're not comfortable with, or something you're not confident with. So I hope this little primer has been helpful. And we're going to talk about a different piece in part 3.